Welcome to Dark Horse Auto and Diesel. In this video I'm going to show you how to install a set of mile marker lockout hubs on a 99 to 2004 Ford Super Duty. And also, since we're going to manual hubs instead of the vacuum hubs, we're going to eliminate the problematic vacuum system related to the hubs. Now, I've already done a video on how to do this before, but it was about a year ago, and I've gotten better at making videos, and this one is definitely going to be more specific. And the reason you might be doing this, if you own one of these trucks, you know that those hubs are actually pretty unreliable. They tend to stick, they cause vacuum leaks, all kinds of stuff that's not fun. They can make your HVAC system get stuck on defrost only, and that's annoying. So we're going to fix all of that today. Now, before you get started, just go ahead and open the box and make sure everything's there. There should be a little baggie. I've already got mine open. A little baggie with 8 screws, which that's because there should be 12 total, and there'll be 2 in each hub. They put them like that out of the factory just to hold everything together. Little 2 of these, they're little spiral things, whatever you want to call them. 2 snap rings, an Allen wrench, and this little guy here, which that's just, if these get a little stuck, you can use it to turn them once they're on the truck. Then we'll get access to the hubs here. If you got factory wheels, it's pretty easy. Just pop this off. Then we'll remove the factory hub, and what you'll do is there's this little snap ring here. Use pliers, or I usually just use my fingers. Usually pops out pretty easy. Like that. And then grab a hold of this and just pull it out. Next, you're going to want to clean out in here. I've got a lot of grease in mine because I use grease to keep these factory ones working, which that still didn't quite work. So you're going to want to get all this grease and stuff out of here and try to get it as clean as you can before we go any further. So when you're cleaning this out, it doesn't have to be 100% spotless. You don't need to get in there with a toothbrush or anything stupid like that, but you want to make sure that you get as much rust and dirt and stuff out of there as possible. I sprayed it with some brake cleaner and some compressed air and stuff like that. Big thing you want to have as clean as possible is this groove right in here, and then this face right here where the gasket seals up on it. So now we'll come up here and we'll take these 2 screws out and separate the faceplate from the actual gear mechanism. Now, since Mile Marker specifically states not to use grease on these, I'm going to listen to their advice and use motor oil. So we'll just take a little bit and squirt it up in here. Make sure there's just a nice light coating on everything in there. Rub that around a little bit. Then you'll put a nice light coating of motor oil all on these gears here and a little bit inside of here too. Make sure you get a little bit up here on the ramps as well. Next, we'll take this whole section and we will install it. You might have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it to slide in. Get it lined up with all the splines. You might have to push down on it a little bit, depending on how your axle shaft is sitting. And then go ahead and just shove it all the way in there, making sure it's past this groove right here. Next, we'll install the spiral lock thing. And to do that, that's pretty simple. Just spread it apart a little bit and get it up into that groove. And then just start working your way around it, pushing in on it. Like that. Next, we'll grab the snap ring and install that the same way. Start at one end, work your way around until it snaps. Next, we'll take our cap. We'll make sure it's in free. Now, the ones I put on my other truck, they were slightly different. There was actually an extra little alignment tab or an extra hole that had to be lined up. These ones don't have it, so just be mindful of that, that if there's actually 7 holes in here, that means that you've got the alignment pin. What we can do to help line this up is get 1 screw through it and just kind of get it threaded in a little bit. a couple turns. Get all of them started. Then in a cross pattern, snug them all up equally. You're going to do that probably about 1,800 times during this. I think that's the 8th time that I've dropped the wrench. Then once you've got them all in and just lightly snug, go ahead and tighten them the rest of the way up. I usually go about a quarter turn once they're snug, give or take. You don't want to over tighten it because you are threading into pretty light material with pretty small screws, so you don't want to strip them out, but at the same time you don't want them flying out going down the highway, which has happened to me before on my other truck. Check them one more time. And then check it and make sure that everything works. And that's it. Pop your center cap back on, or whatever the case may be. Now we can move on to getting rid of all the vacuum system that controls all the old ones here. I will mention real quick before we move on to removing the vacuum stuff, you will end up having this problem. I've always hated this. If you're using the factory nut covers, you end up with a gap in here, and I've always thought it looked ugly, but there's really nothing you can do about that. I wish that they would make some where they actually stick out where they're supposed to or something, but that's just something you're going to have to deal with and overlook it. Just the cost of having much better parts, I guess. Oh, and one other thing, if your luck is anything like mine, you'll end up losing the wrench before you end up going to the other side. And in that case, a 4mm or 5/32 both fits pretty nicely if you have to go that route. And then once you're done, also don't forget to take this little guy and stick it in your napkin box. It's not a glove box. Nobody puts gloves in there. Might be a drug drawer too. I'm not judging what you keep in your truck. So now to remove the vacuum stuff that we no longer need, if you come down here to the wheel, you'll notice that, mine, the hose is already gone. That fell apart years ago, so I've removed it and I put a cap over it just to keep stuff from going down in there, because that's a direct path into your wheel bearing cavity. So we'll take that fitting off there. Hopefully it's not too rusty. There's one on, this is the driver's side of the truck, looking from the front. There'll be one there, and there'll be one right here on the passenger side. So pull the hose off and make sure you clean up pretty well so you don't get a bunch of crap falling down into that cavity. So just take those fittings out. Now obviously you don't have to take the wheel off to do this. You could, it might make things a little easier to get to, but I don't think it's worth the work. And also taking these fittings off the hub here, or off the knuckle, is not 100% necessary. Obviously mine, I put a cap on it, and it's been like that for probably about 2 years now. But I'm just deciding to do it right now, and I'm going to show you obviously the right way to do it. So to take those fittings off, on mine it was 7/16, and depending on how rusty your truck is will determine how difficult this is, if you can even get them out. In place of this little fitting, we'll just use a 1/8" pipe plug. And on mine, a 5/16, the box end of it fits very nicely over it. Yours may differ depending on where you sourced your plug from. We'll get this nice and tight, and that'll seal it up, keep debris from getting down in there. And then repeat the process on the other side. Now if you still have a line up here, go ahead and pull that off and just throw it in the trash, and then come back on the back side of this here. Let me pull my plug off. Just come on the back side, pull that through, and we're going to eliminate this whole line here. This is on the driver's side of the truck, by the way. Then there's a little clip holding that line in place. It's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see it up in there once it focuses. Right there, you want to pop it loose from that. I mean, alternatively, you could just yank on it. It's not going to hurt anything if you damage that line, but you might pull something else loose in the process. There, now it's free. Now we can come underneath the front of the truck here, and this is it here. Just pull it through. Might get hung up a little bit. And then unclip it from here. And then come over and pop it off of this clip. And then to make it easier from up top, just go ahead and fish this through. Yours might be not on the back side of the brake line, but like mine is, but if it is behind it, just go ahead and pull it through. And then come over here to the passenger side and do the same thing we did on the other side. You can just leave it on that clip, because we're going to be pulling the whole thing out here in a minute. Now it is clipped on the back side of the shock mount here. Just grab a hold of it and just push back on it, and it should pop out of there eventually. Show you what we're looking at here on the back side. Then there'll be this line here that runs up to the top, which will go up and unhook that. That just connects to this right here. Go ahead and pop that off of there. And then we can come back down here and pull that out. And then just pull this whole line right through. And next we'll come up here and we'll unhook this here. This is what runs inside of the truck to control the vent position. So we'll unhook that one, and then we'll come down here on the solenoid here, unhook this double plug here, and then we'll also pull this T-fitting here off of the vacuum reservoir. And the reason we're doing that is because we're going to just completely eliminate the solenoid here, because it's actually a failure point. I had mine disconnected but capped off, and somehow this thing broke and caused a massive vacuum leak to where I couldn't control my vents. And of course that happened in the middle of winter, so my feet froze because it was stuck on defrost. Once you get that apart, any of them, you might notice a little bit of a vacuum sound if you've still got any vacuum still built up in the reservoir. And make sure you follow along here, because what we're going to end up doing is eliminating this T and just routing straight from here up to here. And we're going to reuse some of the lines that were taken off here to do that. Might as well go ahead and unplug this now too. Get that out of the way. Ow. So then we'll take this whole assembly out here and we will make some modifications. Make sure if it comes apart like that, you just pull it out of here. We'll want to keep this piece here, the little plastic nub that came out of the vacuum reservoir, if you can get it apart. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. So we'll go ahead and separate these all apart, because we're only going to be using one of them. And we're actually going to end up using the black line here. So go ahead and just cut this apart right here to separate the black and the red lines, because we're not going to be reusing the red one. And just be careful how you cut it. And then we'll want to get this piece here out of this T. And since mine didn't want to come apart, do it this way. And then we'll take this and just stick it into this end. We'll come back in here making sure that this is plugged in if it came out like mine did. And then we'll take this end here with the 90 on it and stick that down in there. And so pull that white one out of there, or the black one. I don't think it really matters too much. The black one appears to be a little bit smaller, kind of backwards for most things in life. And then just plug these two together. Kind of difficult one-handed. And then there you go. Now we'll go ahead and remove this. And basically what we've done here, we've eliminated all of the lines that ran down to the hubs. And now the only thing left on the truck, assuming you have a diesel, is your HVAC controls up here. So that's the only line you need anymore. Now if you've got a gas engine, there might be other stuff hooked to it. I'm not 100% sure. So just make sure you're paying attention to what you're doing if you do have a gasser. There's going to be two screws that hold it on. There's one there and then one there on that side, and they're both 8mm. And as far as removing this thing goes, this truck here has a manual transfer case, so I'm guaranteed to be able to not have any problems with engagement or anything. Now my other truck has the electric shift transfer case, and I've done the same modification to it, and I've not had any problems with the transfer case engaging or anything like that, because obviously there is wires that run to it. So I don't believe it has anything to do with that, but just to be sure, I would hang on to this piece, just throw it in your drug drawer or whatever, hang on to it for a little bit to make sure you don't have any engagement issues with the four-wheel drive. But if you have a manual shift transfer case, obviously it's not going to matter. And like I said, you shouldn't have an issue even with electric shift. Then this side's got a slot, so you don't have to remove it all the way. Take that out and set it aside. And then I'm just going to go ahead and remove the speed clips too, because obviously I don't need it. And every ounce you shed makes the truck lighter, which makes it a little bit faster. And if you have a 7.3, you know that every little bit is beneficial. Now if you really want to get fancy, you can take this plug and the wires and go down to the harness and cut them off, or do whatever you want. But for now, I'm just gonna tuck this down here so it's not flopping around. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully it helps. You can enjoy your now even more reliable truck.